I think the thing with lung function tests is that there's just so much information there, and they're not in a specific order. It's just like one of those printouts, and it doesn't necessarily make sense. And you just have to have an order to go with. So structure and approach, obstructive versus restrictive is obviously very important, and then severity criteria. With obstructive, it feels like most of us have heard of Gold's criteria and we use that. The reports seem to not specifically use that criteria. And restrictive disease, when I'm trying to find out severity criteria, there's a lot of things out there. So I've kind of just mentioned what my physician mate has told me, and so this is the criteria he uses. So I don't think it's that stringent about how we need to talk about severity either, because I don't think the physicians are that specific about it. So primary function, what's your method? What determines severity is what we need to go through. Hopefully this is in. I'm not sure if I've given this in those handout notes, but the first thing you have to do is check FEV1 and FVC ratio. If it's less than 7, it's obstructive. Finally, you check FEV1, and depending on whether it's greater than 80, 50 to 80, 30 to 50, or less than 30, this is how we would determine whether it's severe. And then check reversibility, and roughly, greater than 12% change of your FEV1 means that you might have asthma. So that's obstructive. Always check FEV1, FVC first, then FEV1, and then reversibility. If your FEV and FEV1 is greater than 7, and both your FVC readings and your FEV1 is less than 8, then you're thinking this is restrictive. You just think that your vital capacity, your total volumes of things are now less, but the ratio is still high. So you don't want to get into the trap of reading your FEV1 first, because it might make you think it's obstructive when it isn't. You have to define it by the FEV1 to FVC ratio first, if you get what I mean. Severity, and there's various things, and each some of the pulmonary function tests I looked at didn't have some readings. Like some of them didn't have total lung capacity. And so speaking to my respiratory physician mate, he said, look, he uses roughly this guide of 60 to 80 is mild, 40 to 60 moderate, and less than 40 severe. And that could be, percentages of TLC, vital capacity, or forced vital capacity. So again, we're not respiratory physicians, but this was a reasonable guide to go by. Now, DLCO, normal range is 80 to 120% of predicted. And if it's in obstructive disease, you're thinking it's emphysema if it's decreased. And then if it's in a restrictive pattern disease, you're thinking parenchymal disease. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a framework for what you do. FEV1 FVC ratio, and depending on that, then check your FEV1 and FVCs for restrictive, and then the severity is determined by lung capacity in restrictive and by FEV1 in obstructive disease. I think the best way to do it is just to crack on and do some stuff. Obviously, your patterns are very different. Obstructive looks like that scalloping edge there, whereas restrictive has a lower volume level, but doesn't seem to have any flow restriction. Doesn't have that slow expiratory time. Let's try some cases. So that's what we were going through. Check all of these values. And I'll get everyone to, again, a lot of this is just getting your mind into gear, having a look at these results and just making some guesses about this. So using that formula, take 30 seconds, tell me, and then I'll get someone to tell me what they think. Take 30 seconds. Hopefully that was enough time for people to process this. What do you reckon?
So the FEV1 on FVC ratio is over 0.7, so it's not obstructive.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find a total lung capacity, so I'll use forced vital capacity.
Yep.
Which is over 80% predicted, so it's not restrictive.
Yep. Good.
And then I look at the there's no DLCO, so I'll look at the transfer limitation of carbon monoxide.
Yeah, and they use this interchangeably in this one. So DLCO is TLCO in this.
So it's over 80% predicted, which is also normal parenchymal function.
Beautiful. baseline spirometry, normal limits, no significant bronchial response, diffusion capacity characteristic hemoglobin within normal limits, no prior tests for comparison grade. So this was normal. Get your flow, get your system in check. The one thing I do is I not only, FEV1 to FVC is normal, above 70%. Then I check both FEV1 and FVC, and both of those are normal. They're above 70 or 80, so that's also good. Try this next one. Take 30 seconds, and I'll ask your thoughts.
The FER is above 70, so not obstructive. The FVC is reduced below 80, so it's 70%, indicating a restrictive component. The DLCO is significantly reduced, and when adjusted for lung volume, mildly increased, but indicates an intraparenchymal restrictive lung disease.
Yeah, good. And so this one was pulmonary fibrosis. Great. Next case here. Take 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, John.
So the FEV to FVC is reduced. So it's less than 0.7, so it's obstructive. And in terms of the FEV1, it is predicted at 46%, so it's around gold stage 3. I don't see the DLCO for this case.
Hey, before you move on to that, what's something, if you know it's obstructive, what's the next thing you want to check?
If I know it's obstructive, I want to know how severe it is.
Yep, so you told me the severity, and then one more aspect to know what kind of obstructive disease. There's one more thing you can check.
Oh, the reversibility, whether it's responsive to steroids.
What do you reckon?
In terms of post-predictive...
Not steroids. It's the
bronchodilators. So if it's more than 12% change, so it is responsive. So it goes from FEV1 of 53% predicted to 93%. So it's more than 12%.
Right.
So it's responsive to bronchodilators.
What is this?
So this is asthma.
Fantastic. So you've got all the makings of obstructive disease with significant reversibility with bronchodilators, so asthma. Fantastic. Next one, take 30 seconds. What do you reckon?
My FEV1 to FVC ratio is 0.43. So I've got significant severe obstructive disease.
And just to clarify, like you've absolutely got obstructive disease, but they don't really use the FEV1 to FVC for severity as such.
Of course, yes. Sorry, so the FEV1 is 60% predicted, so it's moderate on the gold classification between 50 and 80.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then my FVC is normal, so there's not a restrictive component superimposed onto that. But my TLCO is 46% predicted, so I've got a significant interstitial disease component. So this is suggestive of.
And before you make any predictions, I may have not heard it. So FEV1 was 60% predicted. It is some level of obstructive. You've now said it's like moderate obstructive. What's the very next thing?
So the post-bronchodilatory at 60, so it's got no bronchodilatory response. So this is not asthma.
Right.
So I'm thinking of emphysematous COPD with the TLCO being as well.
Yeah, great. So this is probably emphysema. They give a lot of history here, right? But essentially, there's a smoker, no reversibility, obstructive. They talk about mild obstructive, but according to our the gold classification would be maybe moderately obstructive defect. And yeah, you've got definite decrease in diffusion capacity. When corrected for volumes, it works out. This apparently is parenchymal damage, lung unit preservation. It's emphysema. Good. Respiratory function report. Next one. Now, what's new with ABCs of Anesthesia is that we're forming a whole bunch of very comprehensive courses for every stage of your anesthetic journey, from medical student to procedural skills, from foundations in anesthesia, as well as really important exam lectures and clinical anesthesia courses as well.